Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Victim's Voice. In today's episode, I will cover the story of a 16-year-old boy who vanished back in 1986. Decades later, his cousin is trying to find out the truth about what happened. But in the midst of her search for him, she uncovers dark secrets from her family's past that some people don't want uncovered. This is the case of Toby Anderson. Toby Eugene Anderson was born in Bell, Texas on December 18, 1969, to parents Eugene and Nikki Anderson. At the time of his disappearance, he was 16 years old. He didn't have an easy childhood, and because of that, he began to act out. He was sent to a juvenile detention center in Northern California first because he supposedly pulled a knife on his mom and stepdad. Then he was sent there again when he took his dad's Bronco for a joyride. He was in the detention home on more than one occasion, and in between was shuffled around to several different family members. And then he disappeared. Toby was the oldest out of three siblings. He had a younger brother, Randy, and a younger sister, Marcy. Their parents split up when they were young, and Randy and Marcy stayed with their mom, while Toby went to live with his dad. Their mom got remarried to a man who was abusive to her and the kids. They were always walking on eggshells when he was around. Marcy was around 3 years old at the time, and Toby would have been around 8. Toby came and visited every once in a while, but because Marcy was so young at the time, she doesn't have many memories of Toby living with them when they were younger. The last time she remembers seeing Toby was when he was 16, and he came and stayed with them for 2 weeks. She remembers Toby being rough-looking and very quiet. To this day, Marcy still has a teddy bear that had belonged to Toby. She never saw him again after that 2-week visit. She asked her mom about him, and her mom told her that he had gotten into trouble and had gone to the detention center. After a while, her mom quit talking about him altogether, and no one really knew where he had went. Marcy thought she would see him again one day after he turned 18, but that never happened. Randy was younger than Marcy, so he has very few memories of Toby. He remembers going to his dad's house in Ukiah, California, when Toby lived there and visited a few times. One of his favorite memories is when he broke their mom's antique phone, and Toby got some super glue and they glued it back together. Their mom never noticed it, and Randy ended up telling her about it in 2006. Randy described Toby as outgoing, not shy, a tough guy who liked cars. Levita Lockhart is Toby's dad's sister. She lived in Ukiah also. Toby had lived with her at one time. Her husband was sheriff of Mendocino County. Toby was arrested in juvie in Mendocino County. After this is when he started bouncing around to different family members. He went mostly between his dad, his Aunt Levita, and his Uncle Randy. Uncle Randy was his mom's brother, who his brother Randy was named after. He was closest to his Uncle Randy. His dad and aunt gave him hard love, which, like most teenagers, he didn't receive too well. Because of his record and what everyone was being told, it was believed that Toby had ran away when he was 16. Family members thought he would resurface once he turned 18, but it didn't happen. They thought for sure he would come back when his parents passed, but still, he never did. Since Marcy and Randy stayed with their mom after the divorce, they didn't really know many people on their dad's side of the family. Traumatic events had fractured the family long before Toby had disappeared. They were all very disconnected from each other, living between Arkansas, California, Oregon, and the St. Louis area. Toby's dad, Eugene, had a sister, Diane, that lived in the St. Louis area. Her daughter, Denise, is the cousin of Toby, Marcy, and Randy. To truly understand Toby's home life and the things he was exposed to, we need to go back to the beginning and talk about his dad's childhood and how the ripples of abuse that happened affected future generations. Toby's dad, Eugene, and his sister Diane were very young when their mom's new husband started molesting and raping Diane. and doing things to the other kids as well. There were 7 kids in total. However, the other 5 kids were their half siblings. It went on for years until Diane was about 10 years old. They were both taken away from their mom. Diana went to live with an aunt, and her brother Eugene went to live with another family. As they grew up, the brother and sister stayed in contact, and as adults were close, even though Diane lived in the St. Louis area and Eugene lived in California. Diane's daughter Denise was never around Toby as a child. Her father was in the CIA and her mother was blind, so they didn't do much traveling at all to visit extended family members. Denise does, however, remember them keeping in contact with Eugene and Toby. They talked on the phone quite often, and Diane had some pictures of her nephew. Denise remembers as a kid her mom telling her that Toby had gotten into some trouble and had been sent away to a juvenile detention center. Denise believes now that he was acting out because of the abuse he suffered at the hands of his stepfather. During Denise's teen years, she remembered hearing that Toby was missing, that he had run away. For years, Denise believed that the juvenile detention center was where he disappeared from. Toby's dad, Denise's uncle Eugene, traveled to the St. Louis area in 1987 to look for Toby. He told him that he had tried to file a missing persons report with the police, but they said he was a runaway, so they wouldn't file one. Denise remembers hearing him say that he just wanted to find his son. Eugene traveled to several different states looking for him, thinking he was somewhere staying with family members. This was the first time Denise had ever met her uncle. As she grew up, she became curious as to what had happened to her cousin. Toby's dad died in 1990. The search for Toby seemed to end there. Marcy received a letter from her dad right before he died. It said, quote, "If anybody ever sees Toby, tell him I love him and I wish he was here with us," end quote. She read this letter to her cousin Denise, and they both thought the letter meant that Toby was alive and just avoiding family because of all the abuse he had endured and had found somewhere safe to live his life. Marcy had assumed that he was just mad at their mom and dad for everything that had happened, so she wondered why Toby had not reached out to her or her brother Randy. She did make an effort in the 90s to try to locate Toby, but her options were limited. There wasn't internet and Google searches back then. She made phone calls calling anyone with the same name, but it never led anywhere. Denise began working with Marcy and other family members to try to piece together what they think could have happened. She finally got to connect with her cousin Marcy and meet her in person. They realized after they started talking that half of the family never even knew that Toby existed. 6 years ago, in 2017, Denise decided to put her time and energy into really finding out what had happened to Toby. Not only for herself, but for Marcy and Randy, who wanted to know what happened to their brother. Along the way, Denise has uncovered many disturbing aspects of her family's history that have been swept under the rug for years. One of the most shocking discoveries was that Toby was last known to be staying with Elmer Wright, also known as Uncle Billy. We haven't talked about him yet, but we will. He was the half-brother of Toby's dad. They had the same mother but different fathers. Billy's father was abusive to Toby's mom and all the kids. Denise talked to her cousin, one of Billy's daughters, and she told Denise that Toby had come to live with them in February of 1986. Marcy remembers Billy and his wife and kids living in California, and she would sometimes play with his daughters, until one day they were gone. They had moved in the middle of the night. This was a common thing that Billy did, as we will find out. What was he running from? Well, he had a lot of reasons to run. Randy had no memories of Uncle Billy, since Billy is their uncle on their father's side, and that he and Marcy were raised primarily by their mother. He never saw him until later in life at his grandmother's funeral. One of Denise's first findings was the discovery that Wright was convicted of multiple sex crimes against young children in Arkansas in 2001. He is currently incarcerated at an Arkansas state prison for these offenses. I'm going to read from an appeal that Wright's lawyer filed on December 19, 2001. I want to put a trigger warning here. There are descriptions of children being molested and raped by Almer Wright in what I'm about to read. If you don't want to hear it, then please fast forward a couple minutes. In 2001, Almer was incarcerated in Arkansas on rape and sexual assault charges and had a release date of September 2021. The record shows that appellant is 52 years old and that the crimes were committed shortly after he had married the victim's grandmother. The children called him Pawpaw or Grandpa Bill. He was charged with raping J.I., a 2-year-old girl. J.I. was found incompetent to testify. Her out-of-court statement was introduced through her mother, Brandy. Brandy testified that her mother was married to appellant and that J.I. frequently visited her mother's house and spent the night. J.I. spent the night in appellant's home on Christmas 1999. A few days after Christmas, Brandy saw J.I. stick her fingers in her panties and touch herself. Brandy told her not to do that. J.I. replied, quote, Pawpaw does, end quote. She also stated that while J.I. was in the bathtub with her infant brother, J.I. asked Brandy if she could suck on her brother's weenie and said that she sucked on Pawpaw's. Brandy stated that J.I. had never been exposed to anything like that. Brandy stated that she did not know whether to believe J.I. until she learned about the allegations that appellant had abused the other 2 children. Appellant was also charged with raping N.W., a 4-year-old girl. N.W. was found incompetent to testify, and her out-of-court statement was introduced through her mother, Danielle. Danielle testified that appellant was married to her mother-in-law. She stated that she was unaware of the incident involving J.I. in February 2000, when N.W. came into the kitchen and told her that Grandpa Bill put his fingers in her tutu, which is N.W.'s word for her vagina. N.W. also told her that the appellant put his privates in her mouth, and that something tasting like nasty apple juice came out of it, and that appellant wiped it up with a towel and threw the towel on the floor. Danielle stated that N.W. also told her that appellant stuck his tongue in her mouth, and that he told her not to tell about these things. Danielle further testified that she then took N.W. to the children's hospital, that she did not question her children, but that an investigator from Family Services came to her house the next day and did so. Doug Sheffield, a child abuse investigator for the Arkansas State Police, testified that he had interviewed over 1,000 children and that he could tell when a child had been coached. He said that N.W. had not been coached. He also said that N.W. repeated to him the statements that she related to her mother, and that she additionally told him that Grandpa Bill put his weenie in her tutu, that it hurt her, and that he put it in very far. P.W., a 7-year-old boy, testified that Grandpa Bill touched him on his privates at Grandma's house, sometimes on the bed and sometimes on the couch. He also stated that the appellant grabbed P.W.'s hand and made P.W. rub appellant's privates, telling him that it would make it grow. This man is disgusting. Finally, he testified that the appellant told him not to tell about these things. When Denise reached out to him in an attempt to find out what had happened to Toby, Uncle Billy was unsympathetic to her search efforts and stated that Toby was a quote-unquote monster who he had caught molesting his daughters. Wright went on to say that he had taken Anderson to the local police station so that they could deal with him, but no record of this alleged visit to the police exists. If he had dropped him off at the police station or even the juvenile detention center, there would be some kind of a report made, but no one has ever found one. Almer Wright has given several different stories about what happened to Toby. Here are a few of them. Toby was on drugs and ran away. Toby died in a car accident. Almer found him hiding in a chicken coop after Toby tried to rape one of his daughters, so he drove him off the property. Almer said he dropped Toby off at either the juvenile hall or the police department in Cave Junction, Oregon, and left him there. He said Toby was probably dead, and if he died, he was killed by being struck in the back of the head, and that his body was buried on a property in California. Other family members said after Toby went missing, Almer had threatened them, saying that they would end up on a hill like Toby. Toby attended Illinois Valley High School from February of 1986 until November of 1986, when his uncle informed the school that Anderson had gone back to California to live with his father. This information contradicts what Almer told the rest of the family, that Toby had run away or been killed by an automobile accident, or that Almer had taken him to the police when he allegedly molested his daughters. Toby's father went to his grave under the impression that his son had simply left his family behind and never looked back. If Almer Wright had not done anything nefarious, then why would he lie to the school instead of telling them where Toby really was or that he had run away? Given Almer's own history of crimes against children, Denise believes that he is twisting the story and that he was the monster in question and that he killed Toby. The first step to proving this theory would be to search the property that Almer was renting at the time for Toby's remains. Denise reached out to the property's current owners, explaining the situation, and after several years of communication, was able to formally organize a search involving cadaver dogs and law enforcement officials. Less than 48 hours before it was scheduled to take place, she received word that the property owners had revoked their consent for a search. In an interview Denise did with the Illinois Valley News for Josephine County, she stated, quote, "We waited 30 years to find Toby. During 6 years of research, only to get this close and to be let down again is devastating. We need to search that property to see if our uncle, who is a convicted child molester, killed him." End quote. The Illinois Valley News also reached out to the property owners and their lawyers for a comment, but got no response. Denise left them a comment, however, stating that she would like them to know that, quote, "This is not anything against the family that owns the property. This is just about us trying to find a missing 16-year-old. It's the principle of human life. Toby was a human being, and the system let him down time and after time. He doesn't deserve to be let down again." End quote. It was also found out that Almer was involved in the drug trade at the time Toby lived with him, and 3 months after Toby disappeared, Almer took his family and once again, in the middle of the night, moved to Arkansas. He said it was because he had to take care of his mother who was ill and dying, but that wasn't true. His mother was in good health. So what was the real reason he picked up and moved in the middle of the night? Billy's daughters have never confirmed that Toby ever did anything to them. They have blocked out many memories due to trauma caused by their father. How could Almer accuse his 16-year-old nephew of such things when he, in fact, is a child molester? His daughter said it is possible that Toby could have accidentally touched her in her private area while they were sleeping, maybe with his foot, since they slept in the same bed. Or it could just be that Almer is trying to make Toby out to be the monster to take the heat off of himself, in my opinion. Denise's Uncle Gary, who is her mom's youngest brother, had also been looking for Toby. In fact, Almer had told family members that he had picked up Gary to ride with him when he dropped Toby off allegedly at the police station so that he didn't kill him. Gary says that never happened. To show how disconnected this family had become, the first time Denise ever talked to her Uncle Gary was when she was 48 years old. Denise has made it her mission to find out what happened to her cousin. She calls Monday Toby Day, because that's the day she dedicates each week to try to find out what happened to him. She has challenged each of Almer's stories to see if there was any truth behind them. She has searched the entire West Coast for people with his name. She has also searched for car accidents on the West Coast around that time. She also searched for anyone else that confirmed that Toby was with Billy. She found a family member on Toby's mom's side. She remembered why Toby had been sent to Uncle Billy's all those years ago. After he got out of juvenile detention the first time, he was sent to live with an uncle on his mom's side. Then he got in trouble again. The second time he got released from juvenile detention, he stayed with his Uncle Randy, his mom's brother. That's when Toby and some neighborhood kids stole a neighbor's Christmas presents. He was then sent to Oregon to live with Almer, who's also known as Uncle Billy. Denise also checked to see if there were any reports made of Toby being a runaway, and there were none. She started calling around California, Washington, and Oregon to find records on Toby to narrow down a time frame of when he disappeared. She spends 5 to 6 hours a week on the phone calling different places. She has called high schools in all 3 states. She looks into all the John Does out there and has checked for a missing persons report that would have been filed in the 80s, but never found one. She contacted Josephine County to file a report because that's the last place he was known to have been. She did finally get a case number. Toby had never been issued a driver's license, and there has been no death certificate filed for him. Some places say he has been missing since 1988. That's because at first, Denise didn't have an exact month, day, and year that Toby was last seen. She only had a block of time. With all the work that Denise has put into finding Toby, they have been able to narrow the time down from a couple of years to a weekend. Denise established from her research that Toby was with Almer right before he disappeared in November of 1986. This made her want to look even deeper into Uncle Billy, also known as Almer's, past. Almer was the half-brother of Denise's mother and Toby's father, as we have already stated. Almer's father had molested children within their household. That's why Toby's father, Eugene, and Denise's mother, Diane, were sent away, while Billy and the other siblings stayed in the home. Diane and Eugene were not the biological children of Billy's dad. However, the rest of the siblings were his, so they were forced to live there. The children's mother, Denise's grandmother, always protected Almer. Denise thinks her grandmother knows what happened to Toby and has purposely tried to mislead the family over the years about Toby's whereabouts and making them believe Toby was alive. She would lie and say she was getting phone calls from Toby over the years, which was not true. She had a history of very disturbing behavior. After Toby's father, Eugene, passed away in 1990, she said Toby had contacted her in 1988 and asked her for money, and she told him no. She claims this was the last time she heard from Toby. We know this is untrue because Denise found proof that there was no record of him anywhere after November of 1986. This also doesn't make sense because Toby had never even met his grandmother. Toby's sister and brother, Marcy and Randy, also had never met their grandmother on their dad's side, since they were primarily with their mother growing up. It wasn't until their dad's funeral in 1990 that they met her. Denise discovered Eugene's obituary that it stated that Toby was living in Arkansas at the time of his death, which once again was in 1990. No one had seen Toby since 1986, so Denise believes it was her grandmother that wrote the obituary, once again trying to mislead the family into believing Toby was alive. Denise had never been close to her grandmother because she saw how she manipulated other family members, and especially the way she treated Denise's mom, Diane. The only time her grandmother came around was to visit her aunts and uncles, and Diane would insist on going to see her mother. She wanted to have a close relationship with her mom. She begged for her mom's attention, but Almer was her mom's favorite child, and she let it be known. She had the audacity to call Diane a whore and said she had slept with her husband. She told her that she deserved whatever she got and that she was lucky to find a nice professional man to marry her. She also told Diane to never bring up the past, to just forget about it. Even when it came to her grandchildren, she favored Almer's kids over the rest of them. There were even a lot of grandchildren that were lucky enough to never have to meet their grandmother. She chose to protect the one child she had who was evil until the very end. Denise's grandma passed away in 2004, but before she died, she made several statements suggesting that she had helped Almer cover up what was done to Toby. She was actually on her way to visit Almer in prison in 2004 when she got into a car accident and died. She had spent all her money over the years paying for legal counsel to try to prove Almer's innocence on the rape and molestation charges that he was convicted of in 2001. Denise started writing Almer in prison. She wanted answers, and she knew he was the only one who could provide her with those answers. Almer has told Denise that Toby was a monster and that he had to get rid of the monster. He tried to manipulate her by saying horrible things about Toby, her mother, and Toby's father. He told her that her mom loved being sexually assaulted by his dad when she was young, that she begged for it, and that Almer, with his sick mind, had watched. Denise had to cut off contact with Almer for her own mental health's sake. Denise learned that a family member had some things of Uncle Almer's that their grandma had when she died. Denise thought if she looked through them that she maybe would find a clue about what had happened to Toby. So she paid for the family member to send them to her. What she discovered was something so horrible that she couldn't believe what she was seeing. There were very disturbing photos of some of her cousins. How many children had this monster raped or molested? How many had he killed, like Toby? Denise has tried to talk to Billy's daughters. One of them told her to just find the truth, and the other one told her to mind her own business, and that they aren't family anymore because she is trying to ruin her dad. I think he's doing a good enough job of that on his own, but that's my opinion. Other girls that Denise has talked to in the family said that Toby was not the kind of person that Almer portrayed him to be. Denise says telling Toby's story is the hardest thing that she has ever done. It has brought to the surface secrets that were kept over generations within the family and opened wounds from the past. Denise doesn't want to hurt other family members or make them relive a horrible time in their lives, but Toby slipped through the cracks, and he deserves to be found, and he deserves justice if he was murdered. She believes her family can never completely heal until Toby is found. Marcy and Randy don't believe their brother is alive, and deep down, Marcy believes that Almer is responsible for Toby's demise. Denise remembers a quote her dad used to say, "Find out the truth and tell the truth, even if it hurts." She thinks about this quote as she searches for answers about Toby. Almer, or Uncle Billy, Wright, was up for parole a couple of years ago. Denise sent a letter to the parole board, and his parole was denied. Unfortunately, however, he is scheduled to be released in 2 months, this September 2023. Denise is worried that when he is released, he will come after her or her mother. In my opinion, after what he did to those little kids, he should stay in prison the rest of his life. But we all know too well that the justice system is broken. Anybody with information about the disappearance of Toby Eugene Anderson is advised to call the Oregon State Police at 1-800-442-2068 and reference case number SP19-290842. You can also reach out to Denise personally through her Facebook group, Bringing Toby Home. That's all I have for this week, guys. Stay safe and peace out.